Hey guys, so I have props. This video is going to be interesting to absolutely no one on earth except me. But I'm waiting on a shipment and it's not here yet. And it would have led very nicely into the video about jump cues that I want to do. Spoiler alert, the shipment is a jump cue. But it's not here yet, so we're going to talk about, I don't know, the next most exciting thing in pool. No, it's not even close to that. So what I want to talk about here is tips. And I have 6 props up here on my table. The sharp item among you may notice that none of these are my current main playing cue by Southwest. But the thing that these 6 cues have in common, and not just the fact that this is a Joss, this is a Joss, I have another Joss around somewhere in N7. Everything here on the table hits absolutely fantastic. And everything here on this table has whatever tip came with it. And it's a single layer tip. That's all I can tell. I'm not a tip expert or anything. But I can tell they're single layer tips, and I haven't changed them. If I had changed them, I would have put the Ultra Skin medium tip, because that's what I've been using for the last several years. Anyway, they all hit fantastic. And here I've just been thinking, well, you know, Peach Hours all hit fantastic. Joss's all hit fantastic. This is a Jacoby right here, hits fantastic. This is my old Rundy Shaw, great. This is my newest cue, my Cohen, hits great. Joss. But what if, just possibly, part of it is the tip? I know that the kind of a tip that's on a cue can affect how it hits, because I've had some really crappy tips in my life and they didn't hit very well. Maybe just these cues, and there's a couple others over there, they just have fantastic tips. I'm sure the cues are great too, but just bear with me. This is just a thought experiment that I'm doing here. What if it's the tip? I'm going to tell you the story of tips in my career, which isn't much. But back when I started playing pool, y'all remember those push-on tips, push-on ferrule and tip combination that you see in like the dive bars and stuff? Just a white plastic ferrule and some kind of gray blue fungusy looking thing that substituted for being a real tip. Well, back when I first started playing pool, I actually used those tips. Now, I didn't take those push-on things and shove them down onto my stick. I was way too classy for that. And what I did is I cut off the gray fungusy things and glued them on the end of the stick. I liked a soft tip. I was a beginner. I couldn't get very good English anyway, and with a softer tip, it helped. It helped me to get good English, and eventually I could even draw the ball. Hell, I bet it took me 6 months before I could even draw the ball. Some might say I still can't. Anyway, so after a year or so of playing with those things, I discovered the Elkmaster tips. I have some. I have more props. The Elkmaster. These are the bluish, those guys. And soft tip, thicker than those things I was using, and let's face it, quite a bit classier than the things I was using. So I used these for a couple more years. And at that point, I was a decent player. This was probably like, I don't know, 85. I was decent, but I was certainly not great. And there was one guy that was way better than me at the time. And he had one of the best strokes I've, even to this day, I've ever seen in my life. And he would take, and he did this to me, he did it 3 times in a row. And he told me he was going to do it 3 times in a row. He shot that ball in and drew back and scratched on a 9-foot table at the rec center at Scott Air Force Base 3 times in a row. This guy used a harder tip, and he told me that sure, you can get more English with a softer tip, but you can control it better with a harder tip. Those are the words that he said to me, and they stuck in my head. Because he had just, here's my chalk, he had just given me absolute proof that you can get just as much of a draw in this case with a harder tip. And he said you could control it better. And I absolutely believed it from what he was saying. I absolutely believed it. See, I can't even make that ball that's an inch and a half from the pocket, but I'd have to shoot that hard. That's pretty bad. This was a little pro tip. Right? Yeah, and this is what this guy shot with. So this is clearly what I shot with. I switched to those. Little pros, and this was about the time that I started to become a pretty good player. Yeah, the big part of that was just I was playing all the damn time. Some of it might have had to do with the tip, but I think the biggest part of it was just that I was playing. If I miss this shot again, I'm going to raffle off my Southwest and take up knitting or something. How's that? No, I probably won't really do that. I'm just going to make a stupid shot without trying to draw back like King Kong. I can't do that. So anyway, so I played with the pros for a long time. 15 years maybe. Then I started having a problem where just every now and then, the pro tip I was using would have what I called just a blowout. And it was like it had an air pocket or a blood vessel or something inside it, and after a while, a bit of playing, some chalking, shaping, whatever, you would hit that air pocket, blood vessel, and the whole tip would essentially just disintegrate and be crap and have to be replaced. And this happened enough that, well, I started looking for alternatives, and this was about the time that the multi-layer tips started to hit the market. At least about the time that I started hearing about the multi-layer tips. So I'm like, well, hell, that's pretty damn good timing. The first ones that I ever shot with were the Morris. And I want to say, year 2000 something, with a Morris, and I used them, I think they were called medium hards. I never was one of those people that like to use rock hard tips. But I was doing better than I had been doing back with the Elkmasters, or with the Elkmasters. I did have a harder tip than those days. Okay. Played with the Morris for a while, then they went to shit. Don't know why. The guy that sold them to me, the guy that owned the local billiard store, told me, Morris suck now. I don't know if they got a different manufacturer or what. A lot of them might have been, back when I first started doing it, maybe it was all like brontosaurus leather, and then all the brontosauruses died off. There was a big asteroid or comet that killed them all. It was in all the papers, you might have heard about it. So then they had to go to pig leather or cow leather, and that was about the time that the Morris went to shit. So, okay, fine. What's next thing I can try? Well, tried Camuys. And I like the Camuys. I think I have some Camuys. I have one Camuy. Woo! This is actually Camuy soft. This must have been an experiment I was going to do. I liked the Camuys okay, but I started having a problem with them delaminating. Just after a while, it's a layered tip, and it would just start delaminating. The layers would start coming apart. But, well, this sucks. Plus, the damn things were like $25 each or something like that. So I didn't like that. I asked the same guy, okay, now what do I try? Because the pros suck, and Morris suck, and Camuys suck, so what should I try now? And he said, try these Ultra Skins. He didn't really say try the Ultra Skins because they were, such a fantastic tip, but because they were similar to the Morris and Camuys that I was most used to. And I tried them, and I've been using them ever since. Again, not because they're the world's greatest tips, but because I didn't have a big learning curve when I switched. And they're cheaper. They're like, I don't know, $4 or $5 maybe, as opposed to 25 for the Camutis. That was ridiculous. Anyway, I really am getting to something. And what I'm getting to is just, I guess, the fact that I'm just a little bit bored with the Ultra Skins. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine for me. But I'm worried that they might not be as consistent as they could be. You know, it's entirely possible that I'm just not the one that's consistent. And the tip would make no difference. Entirely possible. But because it's easier to just buy something than to actually work on something, I said, okay, I'm going to try some different tips. And that's kind of what these props are. Now, I bought a bunch of newer LaPros thinking they might be better. I got one on my other Southwest shaft, and it's good. It hasn't had a blowout yet, but it's only been on for a few days. I have some different types of Ultra Skins. One is, does it say, this silver one here says Ultra Skin Ivory on it. Don't know what that means. This red one says Fire on it. Don't know what that means. I need to go back to their page and look and see what they're supposed to be. And eventually I'll throw some of these on some of my shafts and dig around and see if I like them. I bought this bunch of Elkmasters, I want to say like last summer, and they don't have a big enough diameter. Qs nowadays seem to have a much smaller diameter than the Qs that I started playing with, than the Qs that I'm used to. These are all like, 12 millimeters at most, and I don't think I have a Q that's less than 13, diameter. So these are kind of useless for me. And there's that Camuti Soft I told you about. This here is just this is a LaPro that's probably 15, 20 years old, last one in the bag. And then the other day, when I started thinking about this stuff, I asked Tony. Tony Trans is my only friend that's a really good player. And I know Tony would not bullshit me on something, like just because they were a sponsor or something. So I asked him, I said, hey, what's a good, consistent, and therefore predictable tip that has a good solid hit? And this is a man that could choose from any tip in the world, okay? And he would, because he needs to be able to play well with it. He said triangle. Surprised me that he said that. Single layer tip, at least as old of a brand as LaPro's. Now, I've certainly heard of them. I don't think I've ever hit a ball with one, not knowingly. There is a chance that every one of those Qs I just had laid out on the table, there's a chance that every one of them has a triangle tip on it. I don't know. What I did after I got the recommendation from Tony is I went online and I bought a box of triangle tips. And that's what this is. Hopefully, I haven't opened it yet. Kitty, cat toy. Yeah, but just a box of triangle tips. And I'm going to take off the LaPro that I just got done putting on my spare Southwest shaft. I'm going to put the triangle on. I'm going to see how it plays. If I like it, then I'll take off that Ultra Skin that's on my main shaft and put a triangle on. See how I like it. I have a lathe. I can do tips. It's not like I'm an expert at it or whatever, but at least so far I can put a tip on a Q without burning my house down. So far. That's what I'm going to do, is put a tip on without burning my house down several times. And just see. This is mainly, like I said, just because I'm just a little bit bored. And I like trying different things. And so I want to try. What if all this time I could have had, my main playing cue, in this case my Southwest, but before that it was Sean's, Peach Hours, and you look at what if every one of those cues could have hit a lot better just with a different tip. Something like a triangle perhaps. I want to find that out. I want to find out. I love the way the Southwest hits, but it's not as good as the one that I had laid out on the table. It's just not. It doesn't hit as well. So I'm going to put a triangle on. Use some funky looking tips. They're like gray here. I keep holding this camera. So there's a lens. I'm pointing at the lens right now. And there's the screen. And I'm always going, here, look. And I'm holding this up in front of the screen. I'm always doing this. If you see it in my unboxings of anything, you'll see me doing that. I haven't figured it out yet. So this is just a single layer tip. It's got the grayish junk on the outside. And we're going to find out. I believe these are supposed to be a little bit harder than the Pro Tips. I found some web page that had tip hardnesses. My only real concern is none of these are, can you see? None of these are super wide. I damn well hope they're not all too skinny for me, because that would suck. I didn't think about that when I ordered them. And so that's what I'm going to do. Kitty, another cat toy. They're not as thrilled with paper as they used to be. It needs to squeak or they don't like it. So this is the tip video. As promised, it's about as exciting as watching paint dry, but it is a video and it is kind of relevant to what's going on with me. I had a couple of ideas for another video. I might even do one of them tonight, but the main one, I didn't get my jump cue in yet. That makes me mad. I guess.